Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Now, I've seen many landlords out there ask whether or not they should accept Section 8 housing tenants. They're looking at the pros and the cons of accepting Section 8 tenants and how that will affect their rental income over the years. Now, in today's video, I am going to talk about the different pros and the cons of accepting Section 8, so that way you can make the best decision for your business and determine if it will be lucrative to accept Section 8 for your business. Now, in case you are new to watching any of my content, my name is Nikki Burns, and I help landlords who specialize in buying single-family and multifamily properties make millions and save on average $25,000 in taxes so they can buy more real estate to expand their investment portfolio. So let's get started. Now, first of all, let's define what Section 8 is. So Section 8 is a subsidized housing program that provides low-income individuals rental assistance. Now, the amount that the public will provide for assistance is dependent upon many factors. Sometimes your Section 8 can cover your entire rent. Sometimes it can only cover a portion of your rent. There are certain requirements that applicants have to go through in order to be qualified for Section 8 housing. And sometimes it can be a long, tedious process before you can even be qualified and get accepted into their program for them to start providing rental assistance for you. So there are 4 pros of accepting Section 8 tenants. The first pro is that your rental payments are guaranteed, meaning these payments are paid on behalf of your tenants. It's paid by public housing authorities. So they send you a check or a deposit, however they do that, and it's the responsibility of the tenant to cover the balance if they're not covering their full rent. For example, let's say that you are renting to a tenant who's paying $800 a month and Section 8 only covers $700 a month for them. Then the tenant will be responsible for covering the other $100. Now, it's guaranteed payments because you're always going to get that $700 from the government to pay that rent. And it's always going to be on time, most of the time at least. Now, the second pro of Section 8 housing is you get free advertisements. So the public housing authorities will allow you to advertise your rental properties on certain websites to help you to attract more qualified Section 8 tenants. Now, the third pro of Section 8 housing is the public housing authority already does the pre-screening for you. So they do a partial pre-screen of your tenants. So in order for certain applicants to be eligible for Section 8 housing, they have to go through criminal checks, drug testings, and income verifications in order for them to even be qualified for Section 8 housing. So they do a partial screening for your tenants. However, it is recommended that the landlord does their own screening so you can screen for additional information that you need regarding your potential tenant. Moving on to the fourth pro of Section 8 housing, and that is you have lower vacancy rates, meaning that because there's so much demand for Section 8 housing, there's lots of people that are on Section 8 housing, and they're continuously looking for a place to rent. So Section 8 is in higher demand than the houses that are available because not every property that's out here that's for rent accepts Section 8. So for the properties that accept Section 8 housing, you can fill those vacancies quickly because there's more applicants on Section 8, the waiting list, than there are available properties to rent to Section 8 tenants. Now, moving on to the cons of Section 8 housing. And there are 4 cons that I'm going to talk about. The first con of Section 8 housing is annual inspections. So every year, the public housing authorities representatives, they come by to inspect your property to make sure that it's up to their standards and their regulations. And if it is not, you as a landlord are required to make those repairs pronto. Because if you do not, then you can lose your subsidy in the public housing, which means you won't be able to accept any Section 8 tenants because your properties are not up to code. Now, the second con of Section 8 housing is there are rental cap rates. And what I mean by that is the Public Housing Authority, they determine the maximum allowable rent that you can charge to a Section 8 housing tenant. And they use these numbers based on the fair market rate for the rental rates. So let's just say, for example, if the rental rates for your area is $1,300 a month, you can only charge your tenants up to $1,300 a month. You cannot charge any more than that. So with that being said, if you want to make additional revenues, then you want to think about renting to a Section 8 housing tenant if you want to charge more. So HUD actually, and I said public housing authorities, that's a correction on my mistake. It's not public housing authorities, it's actually HUD that determines the maximum allowable rent that you can charge. Now, moving on to the third kind of Section 8 housing, and that is sometimes you can have a delayed first month's rent. Now, what I mean by that, so typically for non-Section 8 tenants, you would require a first month's rent and sometimes a security deposit. Now, in order for that tenant to move in, they have to pay their first month's rent. However, on the other hand, with Section 8 tenants, you are not allowed to charge a tenant for first month's rent before they can move in. That tenant has to move in first before public housing authorities pay their rent. So sometimes, depending on the process and how things are going, there can be a delay in you getting your first month's rent. But don't worry, it's still going to be paid eventually. So you may have to, maneuver things around a little bit and for that delay and that lag in you getting the first month's rent for that particular tenant. Now, the fourth kind of Section 8 housing is you have challenging tenants. Now, what I mean by that is because the tenants that you're currently renting to that are on Section 8 are usually low-income housing tenants, then they could become a troublesome tenant where they can start to damage your property and stop paying their rent, even though Section 8, let's say, for example, you're still charging them $800 a month, but Section 8 public housing authorities are only paying $700 a month. But you're charging them $800 and they're only paying $700 a month for that tenant. Well, if that Section 8 tenant does not pay the other $100, then those fees can add up, which could lead to you evicting that particular tenant. And sometimes there's a lack of job stability, so there could be another reason why they can't pay their rent, which means you would have to evict them if they're not caught up on their rent. So they become more troublesome and more painful to deal with because of these certain situations and what they're going through. So these are the 4 pros and cons of accepting Section 8. Now, if you want to learn more about these different pros and cons and you need help determining which strategy would be the best strategy for your business financially overall, then click that link below in the description to book a call with me, and I will be more than happy to point you in the right direction so you are making the best financial decision that you can make for your business. And until then, guys, I will see you guys on the next video.